There's a civilization, over 4,000 years old, that had something inside their homes you'd genuinely be surprised to find. Something with drainage, something connected to underground channels, something that, in a few specific ways, worked a little like the toilet in your own bathroom right now. Most people assume flushing toilets are a distinctly modern invention. They're wrong, and the real story of how humans handled this single, universal problem, one every single person on Earth deals with every single day, is far stranger and far older than almost anyone expects. So how did ancient humans actually go to the bathroom for thousands of years, before anything resembling a modern toilet existed? The answer starts somewhere almost nobody thinks to look: the ground itself. For the earliest humans, there was no system at all. You simply moved away from where you slept and ate, and used open ground, ideally somewhere downwind and away from a water source. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but that basic instinct, distance your waste from your food and water, is actually the seed of every single sanitation system that came after it. But as humans stopped moving constantly and began settling into permanent villages, that simple instinct stopped working. You couldn't just walk somewhere else forever. The same patch of ground was now home, every single day, for years at a time, and that created a serious, invisible danger. Human waste left near living spaces and water sources spreads disease, quietly, without anyone understanding why people kept getting sick. The first real solution was almost primitive by comparison to what came later, but it worked. The pit latrine, a simple hole dug into the ground, sometimes lined with stone, sometimes left bare, used specifically to contain and separate waste from daily life. Simple, effective, and in many parts of the world, still in use today, virtually unchanged after thousands of years. But a single household pit only solved part of the problem. What happens when hundreds, or thousands, of people live crowded together in one place? This is where the story takes its first genuinely surprising turn. Roughly 4,000 years ago, in the cities of the Indus Valley Civilization, in what's now Pakistan and northwest India, archaeologists have uncovered something remarkable. Individual homes with built-in latrines, connected through brick-lined drains running beneath the streets themselves, into a citywide sewage network. Some of these homes even show evidence of seated or squatting toilet fixtures, positioned directly over these drainage channels. This wasn't a lucky accident. This was deliberate civic engineering, citywide sanitation infrastructure, built thousands of years before Rome, thousands of years before anyone in Europe would build anything comparable. And here's the detail that makes this genuinely strange. For centuries afterward, in many other parts of the world, sanitation actually got worse, not better, before it got better again. In ancient Rome, the approach shifted in a completely different direction, from private convenience toward public, communal infrastructure. Roman cities built large public latrines, long stone benches with evenly spaced holes, where dozens of people sat, side by side, in the same room, at the same time, with no dividers between them at all. It was social. It sounds almost unbelievable by modern standards, but in Roman culture, this wasn't shameful or awkward. It was social. People talked, conducted business, and caught up on gossip while using these communal facilities together. And there's one detail that tends to genuinely surprise people. Instead of paper, Romans commonly used a shared tool called a tricorium, a sponge attached to a stick, kept in a small trough of water or vinegar positioned in front of the seating, used, rinsed, and left for the next person. Shared, not disposable. An entire bathroom culture built around communal tools most people today would find genuinely uncomfortable to even imagine. Underneath these Roman latrines ran something even more impressive: the Cloaca Maxima, one of the world's earliest large-scale sewer systems, originally built to drain marshland, later expanded to carry waste and runoff out of the city entirely. Parts of this system, remarkably, are still functioning underneath modern Rome, over 2,000 years later. So if sophisticated drainage and sewage systems already existed in the Indus Valley and in Rome, why did European sanitation seem to collapse backward for centuries afterward? The answer lies in what happened after these empires fell. As Roman infrastructure crumbled across medieval Europe, so did centralized sanitation knowledge. Most medieval towns had no citywide sewer system at all. Instead, waste management became fragmented, individual, and, frankly, far messier. In medieval castles and homes, a structure called the garderobe became common, a small stone alcove built into an outer wall, essentially a toilet seat positioned directly over open air, allowing waste to fall straight down into a moat, a pit below, or sometimes directly into a river running past the building. In densely packed medieval cities, without anything like that built-in structure, ordinary households relied on chamber pots, simple containers kept indoors overnight, then emptied each morning, often straight out of an upper window into the street below. This practice was common enough that it created its own piece of language. In parts of France and Scotland, people shouted a warning before emptying a chamber pot into the street, guard as low, meaning watch out for the water, eventually shortened over time into the modern English word we still use today, loo. Waste in the streets, waste in open gutters running down the center of roads. For centuries, this was simply how many major European cities functioned, a genuine, visible regression from sanitation systems that had already existed, in some cases, thousands of years earlier, elsewhere in the world. But while Europe was struggling through open gutters and thrown chamber pots, a completely different, remarkably sophisticated system was developing on the other side of the world, one built not around disposal, but around value. In parts of East Asia, particularly in Japan and China, human waste wasn't treated as pure waste at all. It was treated as a resource. Human waste, collected systematically from homes and outhouses, became a genuinely valuable commodity, sold and transported specifically to be used as fertilizer on nearby farmland. In Edo period Japan, this collection process was organized enough that waste rights from certain buildings were bought, sold, and even fought over, an entire structured economy built around something most other cultures were simply trying to get rid of as fast as possible. This wasn't a primitive workaround. It was arguably more sustainable than most European cities managed for centuries afterward, human waste completing an actual agricultural cycle instead of contaminating rivers and streets. Two civilizations, tackling the exact same universal problem, arriving at almost opposite philosophies, one throwing waste away as fast as possible, often carelessly, the other treating it as something worth carefully preserving and selling. Back in Europe, this fragmented, messy system continued for centuries, largely unaddressed, until a crisis so severe it couldn't be ignored any longer finally forced real change. In the summer of 1858, London experienced something that became known, quite literally, as the Great Stink. Decades of raw sewage flowing directly into the River Thames, combined with an unusually hot summer, created an odor so overwhelming that it reportedly disrupted government proceedings at the Houses of Parliament itself, located directly along the river. For the first time, this wasn't an abstract public health concern affecting the poor and crowded slums. It was affecting the people directly in charge of the city. And that, more than any previous warning, finally triggered real action. Engineer Joseph Bazalgette was tasked with designing an entirely new sewer system for London, an enormous network of underground brick tunnels designed to intercept waste before it ever reached the Thames, redirecting it far downstream instead. This system, remarkably, is still partially in use today, over 150 years later, a direct engineering response to a crisis that had, in one form or another, been building for centuries. Around this same general period, the pieces of the modern flush toilet itself were slowly coming together, a valve-based flushing mechanism, later refined into the S-bend and U-bend trap designs still used in plumbing today, specifically engineered to hold a small amount of water inside the pipe at all times, blocking sewer gas and odor from rising back up into the home. This single design detail, deceptively simple, quietly solved a problem that had made indoor toilets genuinely unpleasant for centuries beforehand. From here, the pieces move quickly toward what you'd actually recognize: ceramic bowls, reliable flushing mechanisms, connection to citywide sewage treatment systems that, for the first time, actually treated waste before releasing it back into rivers and waterways, instead of simply moving the problem somewhere else downstream. Stop and compare these two realities for a second. An ancient person in the Indus Valley, using a built-in drain connected beneath their own home. A Roman citizen, sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers on a communal stone bench, sharing a sponge on a stick. A medieval city dweller, shouting a warning before emptying a pot straight out a window into the street below. Today, you walk into a private room, alone, and everything simply disappears with a single, quiet action. No smell, no shared tools, no shouted warning to anyone passing by outside. The core problem never actually changed across that entire span of time. Human waste has to go somewhere, safely, away from the people living nearby. What changed was every layer humans built around solving that: distance and open ground, a simple dug pit, citywide drainage engineering thousands of years ahead of its time, communal public facilities, private alcoves built into castle walls, an entire farming economy built around collection instead of disposal, and finally, a sealed water trap quietly doing, automatically, what centuries of trial and error never quite managed on their own. Maybe that's the real thread running through this story. One of the most universal, most unavoidable human experiences, something every single person on this planet does every single day without a second thought, took thousands of years, multiple entirely separate civilizations, and one genuinely unbearable summer in London, to finally get right. If you found it interesting how humans solve something this basic in so many wildly different ways across the world,